terms of the laptop, what I was able to find in the course of researching this book is corroboration for parts of this cache of leaked files, including someone who had independent access to Hunter Biden's emails for a time. Says, yes, he did receive an email from a Burisma representative thanking Hunter for the opportunity to meet his father. And yes, he did receive an email including a proposed equity breakdown for a venture with some Chinese energy executives that included the line 10 held for H by the big guy. Those were two of the most controversial alleged emails from last October's leak. And I was also able to authenticate some of the other emails that didn't make the news, but that just showed that there is at least some authentic material in this.
Man, that is some awesome, hard-hitting journalism. This could cost Joe Biden the election. Joining me now to talk about that and other things, my buddy Drew Holden. He's a writer for Commentary. Drew, that is some awesome, hard-hitting journalism, except it seems like it's the wrong year, Drew.
You would think, right? I mean, if this story had broken, I don't know, maybe exactly a year ago, I'm sure it would have made a lot of waves so long as it was Politico who was saying that it was legit, rather than Politico saying that actually someone else who got this scoop was just pushing Russian misinformation.
I would encourage people, I don't do this very often on the show, I would encourage people to go check out Drew's Twitter account where he does these long threads that are, I mean, the media has to hate your freaking guts, Drew. You did a long one about how the media did everything in their power to tamp down this story, to completely ignore this story. I think a lot of people forget when this story dropped from the New York Post, credit to them, Twitter banned the New York Post Twitter account for a time.
That's right. They banned their account. And not only that, you couldn't even share the link to their story either on Twitter or even in DMs. You couldn't send someone a DM with this story. It was anathema. It was completely forbidden across the entire website. And, you know, it was interesting, too, because the media and big tech here really did play one off the other, because Twitter took some heat for banning the post. And then they pointed to all this other coverage. And they're like, look, they're spreading misinformation. This was never true to begin with. And then media sources would turn around and say, look, Twitter has banned this information. Obviously, it isn't legitimate and valid and verified. And so what you end up with is you have countless outlets, along with Democrats and other blue checks across Twitter, going full bird saying 100% this is a lie. It is Russian disinformation. James Clapper called it textbook Soviet Russian trade craft. And now a year later, the mainstream press has confirmed it. The most explosive details. I will also point out that when the original story broke, it was 2 weeks before the election. Just you may be familiar with how that election panned out, but I can't help but think that maybe if this had gone a little bit differently, we might be looking at something different.
Well, Drew, I mean, you bring it up. We have the exit polls. They're out there of people who saying they didn't know about the Hunter Biden story. And if they had known about the Hunter Biden story, they would not have voted for Joe Biden. If memory serves me, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, I think it was 6% of the voters who voted for Joe Biden, more than enough to flip this election the other way, which brings me to my point here. We are in a time where with endless access to information, or at least there should be. Right. And yet there is a portion of this society that is so misinformed, to use an overused word today, so misinformed, they live in an alternate reality, Drew, and they have no idea.
I think that's right. And, you know, I think one of the things that really stood out to me from this entire, reporting New York Post fiasco was NPR, right? A station that's listened to by lots and lots of people across the country, many of whom, I would imagine a decreasing number of whom, but many of whom believe that it's kind of this independent and valid journalism. Their PR office actually put out a statement explaining why they weren't talking about the story. They said, and I'm quoting here, that they didn't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just distraction. That's how they framed this entire story. It wasn't just, hey, this story came out and we're not sure about it. We're still investigating some of the details. We're trying to independently corroborate it. No, it was, we are refusing to give this story about corruption for one of the two people running for the highest office in the world. We refuse to give it any oxygen, and we're not even going to talk about it.
Drew, I mean, it leads me to why this stuff is so damaging. I mean, I understand Hunter Biden's personal life is not great, and frankly, that's not my business, and I don't care. If he wants to go have a Coke and a smile with a bunch of European hookers, that's his business. But if he is invested, if China's invested in him, if they have their hooks in him, then that's a really close proximity to the President of the United States of America. And I don't know about Joe Biden. There's not much I wouldn't do to help or save one of my sons. This is a big deal, and he still wasn't divested from China.
Exactly, yeah. And so we recently just had a story break that he's got about a 10% equity share in a Chinese company. But I think what really kills me about these emails, too, is it isn't just about Hunter Biden, right? I'm sure you remember Tony Bobulinski, a former business partner of Hunter Biden. He had a sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson where he talked about this 10% held for the big guy, right? And I think anecdotally, we all kind of assumed that's got to be Joe Biden. This email that, of course, was disputed as non-legitimate, as Russian disinformation, you name it. This was one of the emails that this reporter from Politico was able to independently confirm and verify. We know this was a real email that was sent to Hunter Biden. Who is the big guy? We still don't have an answer to that. And so I agree with you. It's incredibly important if the son of the president is compromised by a country that has no goodwill towards us. But I think it's even more important to get to the bottom of what has Joe Biden, the president of the United States, what is his involvement and exposure to all of this information? Because it sure looks like it's a lot higher than zero.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.